Okay, so we're going to talk about the principles of design next. I feel like these are more difficult to understand than the elements of design, because the elements of design are just very straightforward with, color, line, things like that. So with the principles of design, we have these 7. I would write these down. So these are going to go on the bottom of those rectangles or that book that you're making. We have pattern, proportion, balance, emphasis, rhythm, contrast, and unity. Okay, so these are all of those things that we're trying to illustrate and to show with our object that we chose. And we should have 3 of them. We have 3 sizes. And so we're really going to use those 3 sizes on the back side of this book, okay, for the principles of design. Okay, so if we look at pattern, this one's, I think, a little easier for us, easier to understand than some of the other ones. So you are repeating something over and over. You're creating some type of pattern out of the object that you made. And so you can see, like the scales and the different patterns over here, that you're repeating it over and over. You could keep it all the same color, like this is black and white, or this one on the right kind of changes colors. The backgrounds are blue on some and then purple on some. So, you could change what you want to do and change the color, but we're going to make some type of pattern. So that's repeating it. Many times people are using their smallest piece or their smallest object to do this because you need to be able to fit more on that page to show that pattern. Okay, proportion. So this refers to the size of that object in comparison to something else. And so this is kind of a funny, I think, depiction of proportion where it shows those sizes getting smaller. So it's comparing it to something else. And so for me, at least for mine, I did proportion showing the distance, and I used all 3 of my pieces, and I'll show you that in a second. But you want to show that size comparison. Okay, is it big? Is it little compared to other things? Okay, emphasis. So this is showing, and sometimes this can be difficult or to show, but really if you can make sure that you're changing one aspect of it to show that there is something different, even though you're using the same object, just like on this chess piece, there's some emphasis in that white one because it is different. So how can you do that with your objects? Okay, and it could be, like you're doing all of these different baseballs, and one of them is from like a special place, or it was the home run ball from something. Maybe it's signed by somebody, but you have to somehow emphasize and draw attention to that one place to make it a focal point. Okay, and then when you have like this little spaceman over here, the color is really helping you make that emphasis. Okay, rhythm. So this is making your eye move throughout the piece. You can see the rhythm in the piece below, how it makes you go from one side to the other. Okay, and even in this this painting of Picasso's, same thing. Like it's showing that movement. This is down a staircase, but that the objects take. So you're trying to show the movement with this rhythm. And I will show you mine in a second. Okay, so contrast, you are comparing two things together, okay, to make them stand out. And so the most contrast you could show would be black and white. But you can use contrast in lots of different ways. It just, you wouldn't want to use like yellow and orange next to each other. You're not going to have a lot of contrast that way because they are so close to each other on the color wheel. So you want to pick something that stands out for that contrast. Okay, balance. So there are 3 different types of balance. So I would make sure you write this down to kind of remember what you have as choices. You have symmetrical balance, so those are the same on both sides. You are symmetrical, right? You can draw a line down the center of you. You have an arm on each side, a leg on each side. So that's kind of an easy way to think about it. Asymmetrical is they are different but still balanced. So maybe you have, you know, one tree on one side and then lots of little trees on the other side. And so they still carry the same amount of visual weight. But I'd say asymmetrical balance is a little more difficult to show. And then radial balance, something you think of like a sun that radiates out from the center. Okay, so these are going to show those a little bit more. So symmetrical. Okay, a butterfly. You can see the design in this one too, how these are symmetrical. Asymmetrical. So like I talked about, like a tree, like this has like an apple on one side that takes up a big amount of space, and then you have lots of little things over here, okay, that take up a similar amount. Same thing with the darker buildings on one side, and you have lighter ones. So asymmetrical, and then radial. Okay, with like the stained glass windows, that kind of thing. Okay, unity. I think this is our last one. All of the elements work together to create something that is whole or something that is finished. And so you're probably going to have lots of things that are included in this. Okay, and I would suggest for yours, using your object, is that you have it in its location, like I talked about, where it would actually be. Okay, so like the baseball that I've talked about before, the baseball's sitting in a baseball glove, right? So it feels like it all goes together and it feels like it fits. There's harmony between all of those things. It makes sense why a baseball would be sitting inside a baseball glove. Okay, so if I showed you mine, let's go ahead and just look at these real quick. So I have my 3 cups that I've used, and man, I really hurt that paper. So you can see these 3 that I've used to trace. So this is my pattern. Okay, so I have put these on here and I had to think to myself, okay, I'm going to go this direction, and then I wanted those straws to fit together because I thought that was cool. And so I fit it here, but then I had to think about, okay, where does this next part of the pattern go, right? And then for a while, I didn't know why it looked wrong, but I was missing a section of that pattern, just the straw on the other part. So this kind of reminds me of like a piece of cloth, like it's a, you know, what would it look like if you got something from the store and there was that pattern on that cloth? Okay, so think of what you can do. I think the smallest one is the best thing for that, or it's the easiest. Okay, so we have proportion. So I'm just showing all of mine together, and that, you know, this one's bigger, this one's smaller, and kind of comparing them as they get, you would see all those sizes. Okay, I'm going to make mine on a table just where it is. I have balance. So radial balance is what I chose because I felt like this would make a neat design by doing that. And I have simplified some of my things. So like I didn't put the little logo in here, but on some of them I have just colored them green or colored them a different color. Okay, so you could do something similar to emphasis. So I'm not done with this, but I'm making this one pink and I'm making these brown. And so there's going to be emphasis with those where I'm trying to show that I want you to look at this one. Okay, so some type of emphasis. Rhythm. So I'm showing movement by making it look like this cup is moving or falling or creating some type of line that I want you to follow when you look at it. And then I have contrast. So I really simplified these. I just have the outline of them. I've given myself maybe a more dynamic line since it's angled. And then I've switched my colors. I picked orange and blue again just because I like blue. And I wanted to see what that would look like. And then unity, I have this drink now. It's sitting with a sandwich like you have this as a meal, and all of this goes together. Okay, so I don't have this side completely done. This is still a work in progress, but you can see how all of those look. I have other pictures that are up online that you could look at from last quarter if you wanted to see those. But I would suggest the same thing that we did before, some little thumbnails, and kind of think about, okay, what do I want to do? Okay, because I think it makes the execution of this faster if you have that done, because you mess up on the thumbnail as opposed to messing up on this and then having to erase off of this big piece of paper, or having the residual lines from messing up on the paper. Okay, so that's where we are headed.